line, Sheriff Miller by his side. Lively bluegrass, hearts alive.
Brought to you by Big Rapids Tire.
Bob, who invented sports?
I don't
You know, we've been playing sports since the Roman days, right?
Yeah, don't mind all the noise. Brian's
the Romans
adjusting his microphone
I got
here.
hearing aids, and I might have to take them out today. By the way, folks, if your hearing's not good, I suggest getting hearing aids. They've really helped me out a lot. I've seen a lot of guys wear them, and I always thought I'll never wear those, but I love them. Anyway, you know, the greatest gift God ever gave us is the ability to do anything, excel in what you really want to do. And there's a few people that have been fortunate enough to do that. The other night I was watching Mad Dog. That's my granddaughter. She's 13, playing a 13, 14 feet, 15 league softball. Big Rapids has got a big future in softball, always has been. But anyway, she had an inside homer, 2-run homer. They played Reed City mercied us. But when you're a grandpa watching your granddaughter and she does something like that, and I've tried to get this guy on, not tried real hard, but I have wanted this guy. I should rephrase that. I should say I wanted this guy on here for a long, long time. My dad was a legend in this town, and the people that knew him loved him, and he loved people. And back in the old days in the Elks Club, my dad would get a sports figure of somewhat playing national football or baseball or whatever. And the one year, I'll never forget it, this program. So I'd love to have your kids listen to it because it's a pretty interesting life story on Jim. Jim's getting up there in age. He looks great.
Yes.
Good morning, Jim.
Morning.
And Jim, I just asked him before the show, you've been here a long, long time. He's going to tell us how long. He's going to tell me about growing up in California. See, I remember all that stuff because there's one of those times that my dad took us to the Elks that I do remember the life story of Jim Small. He played for the Detroit Tigers. I'll throw the rest at him now. Good morning, Brian.
Morning. Actually, I tried getting another guest. I had to go home real quick before coming here and ask Coop if he wanted to come on. He was like, yeah. And then I remembered he had the lawn to mow, so I put him to work and came here instead.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, baseball, that's this time of year, and Jeff Jenner, who was in this morning, bringing 5 kids in there. I said, where are you guys going? They're going to Central Michigan. They have a baseball camp. These kids are only 9 years old, 10 years old.
San Jose.
And then you went to school with some pretty high-profile people.
Yeah, I went to a Jesuit high school, all boys high school in California, San Jose. And I was a day student. My mother had to take a job so I could go there. But we had a large boarding school, and we had Bing Crosby's boys were going there. In fact, I played basketball with Dennis, one of the twins. And one of my classmates was Dan Topping Jr., whose dad owned the New York Yankees. And one of my teammates, Steve Schott, was eventually ended up owning the Oakland A's. So they've produced a lot of athletes. I don't know if you remember Dan Pastorini.
Yeah.
Well, Dan Pastorini was there. There's probably been 15 different fellas, at least out of Bellarmine, that have gone into professional baseball, and there's some in the NFL and that. So it was sort of a factory. We had kids from Saudi Arabia, numerous places, but ended up on a farm in Tigard, Oregon, outside of Portland. And then after the war, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, we moved to California.
How'd you like growing
California?
How'd you like growing up out there?
Well, it was great as far
Up out there.
Well, it was great as far as, sports and everything. I think about it. I used to get up every day and get on my bike with a glove and a bat and go and be gone all day. And your folks didn't worry about any of that. Like today, everything's an issue.
How big a town was it you grew up in?
Well, San Jose is well over. I think it's probably the 3rd largest city in California now. It's where Silicon Valley started.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, do you ever miss it?
Silicon Valley started.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, do you ever miss it?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, there's too many people. I like the rural life.
Yeah. Did you keep in touch with those guys that you went to school with?
A little bit, yeah. I went back to a couple of
The reunions?
Reunions.
Sure. Yeah.
And in fact, today, it's 70 years ago today that I graduated from high school.
Wow. Oh, really?
Yeah. And 70 years ago today, I signed a contract to play with the Detroit Tigers.
Isn't that something, Brian?
Right.
Yeah.
And 8 days later, I joined the team in Yankee Stadium.
Wow.
And people don't realize it, but there was a 5-year rule in baseball when I signed. I'll give you an example. Harvey Keene.
Yeah.
Harvey Keene signed in 1952, I believe, and 51 or 52. And Harvey got a lot of money to sign, and he obviously became a great player for the Tigers and in baseball. In 1953, they started a bonus rule. And what was happening was the teams with all the money, the Yankees, the Tigers, which was owned by the Briggs family at the time, were signing all the kids because they had the money. The Red Sox, I used to watch the San Jose Red Sox, and they had what they called $1 million infield. This is back in the early 50s, late 40s. And so anyway, the genius of the owners, they decided, well, we got to stop this, and we're going to penalize the teams that are taking these kids off. So
A little salary cap kind of thing.
Sort of, yeah. And so they established a rule that if you signed a contract for anything over $6,000, you were frozen to the big league club for 2 years. And I can tell you that was K-Line. He was in that. Sandy Koufax, Harmon Killebrew. Those were all the people in that 5-year span that I could name a whole bunch of them, but we were frozen to the big league clubs. And so consequently, some of them were on a team that, like K-Line, he got a break because Bob Neiman broke his ankle. And they weren't going anyplace. And it jump-started his career, and of course he turned out to be Hall of Fame.
Right, yeah.
But, anyway, that was the bonus rule, and there's a book really that was written by a fellow from California that was in school when I was out there, and he was doing an article for Baseball Digest on me, and we got to talking, and I said, Brent Kelly was his name. He's a big horse veterinarian in Kentucky.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And but anyway, he wrote this book called Baseball's Biggest Blunder, and it was about the bonus rule and what it did to some kids, and because what would happen is, I played high school ball and went to baseball schools. I took batting tips when I was a kid from Ty Cobb.
Oh,
wow!
Yeah.
I mean, you think I'm old, eh?
Yeah, no, you look great.
Yeah.
I know you're 80, but go ahead.
But anyway, and I'd go to schools, and there'd be Kurt Flood, Vita Pinson, Frank Robinson, and all these fellows that California was the hotbed then.
Yeah.
It was much before Florida and some of the other states, and so Jim Gentile, all these guys that came out of California. The Bay Area was big, and Southern California. So it was an interesting time, and looking back, there was only 8 teams in each league, 16 ball clubs, and so it was a very interesting time. I had I was very fortunate. In 1953, I was selected to represent Northern California along with a fellow by the name of Frank Hall, who ended up being a USC quarterback. But we represented the state of California in the United States All-Star game in the Polo Grounds. In 1953, I was, I think, the 3rd youngest to ever play in it. And we had about 40,000 people in the Polo Grounds. We played the New York Journal American All-Stars. And their manager was Rabbit Moranville. That's a name that maybe he was a character. My manager was Charlie Gehringer.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jeez, you got a book here.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And so anyway, that was the start of a lot of things. The scouts were following me, and when it turned out, I had an opportunity to sign with all but 14 of the 16 teams.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it your bat or your glove?
Well,
Or both?
your speed.
I was pretty fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I ran. When we didn't have a baseball game, the track team would have me come over sometimes and run 100. I wasn't the fastest kid in our school, but I was running 100 in about 10.3, 10.4.
Wow. Yeah.
Back in those days.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I hit well. I did everything well at one time.
Then how old were you when they drafted you? 18?
I was 18 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that pretty rare now, isn't it, to go to?
Well, yeah. It's interesting. My first year is the year Kaline won the batting title,
Wow.
and he is today the youngest man to ever win the batting title. It's 70 years later. He beat
Yeah.
Ty Cobb by I think 18 or 19 days age-wise.
Tell us, Al Kaline, of course, he was a main figure in all our households back then. What was he like?
He's a good guy. Just
Yeah.
a really good man.
They said that they wanted to give him more money, and he says, "No, I don't." want
That's
that
right, and
money."
it cost him in his pension.
It did.
Because they had made a rule where if you didn't make $100,000, there was a difference in your pension. Well, he made the 100,000, but he took 80 and deferred 20.
Wow.
Bill Freehand did the same thing, and it cost
Really?
them in their pensions. Yeah,
Wow.
it didn't hurt him too bad.
No. Boy, you played with some real big legends. Well, you're a legend.
No,
'Cause how many years?
in my own mind.
Well, no. But
As you get older, it's amazing what a legend you become in your own mind.
Yeah, well, maybe so, but I just think it's so intriguing because, like, Brian can relate to it, and I can really relate to it because that was my days. We all played baseball, but we also realized that, and it's still true today, your best baseball players come from the South or the West, don't they? Because it's year-round. So you played it year-round. Did you play any other sports when you were in high school?
Yeah, I played high school basketball for 3 years, and then my senior year I didn't play because they wanted me to concentrate on baseball, and they didn't want me getting hurt. But I had a basketball scholarship to Gonzaga.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. And-
I was a guard.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, you were fast.
Yeah, and every kid on our team ended up playing college basketball.
Really?
Yeah, 3 of them. 2 of them at Santa Clara, 1 at Stanford, and 1 at San Jose State, and 1 Ralph Brandt broke all of Tommy Heinsohn's freshman scoring records at Holy Cross.
Now, because I jump back and forth now and then, siblings, how many did you have?
I had 2 older brothers.
And did they play ball?
No. My brother ran track. My oldest brother, who I tell the story, but he graduated from high school when he was 17, and when COVID hit, one of my granddaughters was missing her graduation and everything, and so I wrote her a letter and I said, "Well, here's what happened to your Uncle Denny when he was graduating from high school. A month later, he was in the occupation of Japan."
Oh, war.
Yeah, so there's, how soon we forget.
Yeah.
Right. No,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then your other brother?
My other brother was played football at Bellarmine for a year or 2, then transferred over to San Jose and played some football there. And he was in the Korean War.
Okay.
And he's passed. My older brother is 96 and still plays golf 3 days a week.
Wow. What'd they end up doing?
Well, my oldest brother, Denny, ended up being the vice president of Harrah's Clubs, the gambling casinos. And then, Then when he retired, he owned casinos in Nevada and Carson City, Nevada.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and then your other brother?
He was an outlaw. He lived in the mountains of California, and he was a firefighter.
Okay.
Worked on rice farms and things like that. Loved the outdoors, he'd fish and hunt and that. And he died early. Well, I say early. He was in his early 80s, but he suffered from Agent Orange. Because that's what they use for fighting the fires, you know. And it ruined his lungs and that.
Yeah. So you came Detroit Tigers, and what year was that again?
1955.
And then, what was that like? I mean, were you intimidated or did
Intimidated? You bet. Here's a bunch of guys that are,
Right.
anywhere from, K-Line would be been the youngest, and he was probably, he was just 20. But everybody else was 25 to 35 and been around the block and drank a lot and smoked cigars and hated kids that took somebody's spot that on the roster.
Right. And then,
I shouldn't say hated, but
no, right.
That's competitive.
But-
yeah.
So, name some of them that were on there. Was Mickey Stanley playing back?
No, Mick's much younger than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, L.K. line.
Ferris Fain won 2 batting titles in the American League when he was with Philadelphia, I think. And Earl Torgerson, Bill Tuttle, Harvey Keene, Ray Boone.
Yeah.
Ray Boone's 2 sons were in the clubhouse all the time, and they, of course, went on to, Charlie Maxwell, Bubba Phillips, Red Wilson, Frank House. Frank Leary was my roommate a lot of times.
Who was the manager?
Bucky Harris, my first year, and 2 years, and then Jack Ty.
Okay. So, what position did you play?
I was an outfielder.
Outfielder?
Yeah.
And then left field or right field?
I played center.
Any of them, right?
And any of them.
Because of your speed.
Nobody played right field.
Did you what stadium did you like the best of all the stadiums you played? I was in the old Tiger Stadium with my dad. My dad used to take us down there when you guys were playing. Yeah. And I loved Tiger Stadium.
Brick Stadium was a great stadium. Yeah, it's, I suspect that Yankee Stadium at that time was special.
I bet, yeah.
To see Mantle and, and those guys.
I know it.
Yeah.
Did you at that time realize that, geez, I'm one lucky guy? I know you worked hard to get where you're at, but you're, percentage-wise, you're 1 out of a million?
Well, what it would be, the best way to, I think the best way to explain it today would be that if I was, and if they had a draft back in those days, I would have been a first-round pick.
Wow.
I mean, that's how you look at it.
Right, yeah.
Now, today, they might not even look at me. These guys are bigger, stronger, but,
Things change.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Well, but still, your eyes must have got really big. Huh? Did you ever get nervous?
Yeah. I can remember the first time I went to bat.
Right. That's what I want to talk about. Yeah. What was it like? Live through that again.
It was in 55, and I don't know what month it was, but Dick Donovan was a right-handed pitcher for the Chicago White Sox, and a good one.
Uh-huh.
And it was probably it was a nothing game for Detroit. So Bucky said, "Grab a bat," and I went up, and it was in Detroit, and I grounded out to second base. I didn't strike out, so I felt
you hit
that was
it. Yeah.
good. But anyway. When I got back in the clubhouse, because it was last out of the game, I was and we had metal stools by our lockers, and I put my foot up to take my shoes off, and I couldn't stop my foot.
Oh, really?
I bet. I bet.
I bet, yeah.
So, but my first big league hit was off of Bob Lemon.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
Ray Boone was a great friend of Early Wynn's because he had been at Cleveland before he came to Detroit. And so anyway, I pinch hit against Early Wynn one day in 56. And I almost took his head off with a ball back up the middle into center field.
Wow.
So Boone that night went to dinner with Early Wynn. And Wynn told him, he says, "You tell that little S.O., that he ever hits the ball back up the middle, I'm going to knock him on his ass."
Really? Oh, yeah.
About a month later, I started a game, and Wynn was pitching. Well, I've never popped out to third base in my life, but I did twice that day off.
Did you?
Pulled off the ball and
Yeah, really.
Yeah, so
Well, so then how many years did you play for the Tigers then?
I was there 55, 56, and 57. And at the end of in 57, I was in the trade to Kansas City when they brought over Gus Zernial and Billy Martin.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a bunch of, at the time, I think there was 13 players involved between the
Wow.
two teams. It was a large trade. And so I went to Kansas City, and I got to spring training, and Roger Maris was on the team at the time.
Wow.
And I pulled a groin in spring training, so I didn't play much. So but by the time I got better, they sent me to Buffalo, the International League, and that was in '58. Well, that was an interesting time too, because we opened the season in Havana, Cuba, and the revolution was breaking out.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was. We had security around us all the time, and you'd get a call from some wealthy Cubans, and they'd have their daughter outside the hotel, and they'd want you to come down and meet her with a quick marriage or something to get them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the second time we went into Havana, we went into the interior. They wanted to play a game. It was in Morón, Cuba. It's up in the mountains, and I'll tell you, the first fellow I faced in that first series in Havana was Mike Cuellar. He was 19 years old, left-handed. Of course, he became a great pitcher with those great Oriole teams. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we flew into the interior, and we used DC-3s, and landed in a field in the mountains in grass.
Wow.
And out of the mountains, out of the forest comes these trucks with all these guys with guns and camo.
Wow.
And at that time, because we had a few Cubans on our team, we had Ray Noble had caught with the Giants, and there was another fellow, and they were, that was their home, and but they didn't know who was who at the time, so everybody was just silent, and so yeah.
wow, that's a great story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So how many years did you do that then?
Well, I was in Buffalo, and things weren't going well for me, so I'll never forget George Selkirk. In Buffalo, in Offerman Stadium, I could be right here in the on-deck circle, and you're in the front row.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Really?
And people, they were in.
Yeah.
And what had happened? They had won the Little League or the Little World Series the year before with Buffalo, and they had a center fielder by the name of Joe Caffey, and Joe was had gone on to Cleveland, and he'd had a big year with Buffalo. So I was going to take his place and do everything. Well, I didn't, and so anyway, I was in the on-deck circle, and this was in June, middle of June, and a guy threw a bunch of pennies at me and hit me with them. And take that, you bonus baby,
right.
Blah, blah, blah. Well, I went in the stands after him.
Oh, my Lord.
So anyway.
No, I like that.
So anyway.
Oh, Lord.
So anyway, I didn't play the next day. Well, George Selkirk was the farm director for the Kansas City A's, and he flew in the next day, and I'm sitting in the dugout during the game, and he comes down and he says, "How's everything going?" I said, "Well, actually," I says, "things are looking up. I've been all of a sudden started to make good contact with the bat, but maybe it hit a little bit bad luck with line drives that I could buy." But I says, he says, "I don't mean that." He says, "How are you mentally?" Oh. And I thought, what do you think? I'm cracking up.
Right.
And he says, anyway, we're going to get you out of here. And we're going to send you to Little Rock, Arkansas, in the South Atlantic League. And I could have kissed him.
Right.
Until I got to Little Rock.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
It was so hot and miserable. But anyway, I ended up finishing the year there, and things started coming around a little bit, and I went back to Kansas City at the end of the year.
Okay.
And then the next spring, I went to spring training, and see, they had, you only had so many options off your big league contract. And I'll tell you an interesting story. Kurt Flood, who is, everybody who's in the NBA, the NFL, and in baseball should thank him for the rest of their lives, because he's the one that broke
Free agent.
the agency. He brought on free agency. And so anyway, but I had no more options. In other words, they either had to keep me on the big league club or they had to option me out, and they didn't have the control that they wanted. But in order to option me out, they had to get waived. You had to get waived through the other teams, waivers. So anyway, there was a fella on the team, Russ Meyer, an old pitcher been in the National League, and a real character and a good guy. And he was wondering every day if he was going to make the club and that. And so anyway, he's in the same hotel as we all are, but in the room next to him was a guy by the name of Park Carroll, who was the general manager of the Kansas City A's at the time, and he was always on the phone making deals and this and that. So Meyer one day comes down, and he would listen with a glass up against the wall to Park Carroll talking on the phone to these other teams. And he said they tried.
Lord.
He said
awesome.
they're trying to get you through Cleveland because Bill Veeck is picking you up on waivers. But he says they made a deal, and I heard him, and Carroll says, well, we won't pick your guy up if you let Small go through, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I ended up in Shreveport in the Southern Association. And that year, it was probably about the middle of June. I was hitting about 320, and everything was going good. And my wife was expecting in August. We were there. And so anyway, Roger Maris had an emergency appendectomy at Kansas City. And I had been at Charleston in the American Association in Detroit. Had sent me out for about 45 days, and they brought me right back because I was hitting about 350 down there. And so anyway, they said Zeke Bella, who was an outfielder there, was doing well. They were bringing him up for Maris's spot. And they said, we want you to go to, they want you to go to Charleston. And I said, well, you know, and my manager, Les Peden, he said, Jim, he says, I wouldn't, you know, doctors and everything with the baby and that. And he says, because it doesn't matter the way you're going, you'll be back in Kansas City next year anyway. That night I hit the center field wall. And there's the center field wall in Shreveport had a gap underneath it about this high. And as I went, my foot caught, and I tore everything from my knee to my ankle. Didn't break anything, but had bone chips in that. So I was in a cast for, probably almost a month, and couldn't run and do anything. So they put me, I got back in the lineup in early August, and they played me only against left-handed pitching. I was a left-handed pitcher. They didn't want me, you know. So that was sort of a turning point. And then the next spring I went to spring training, and I ended up at Shreveport again, and wasn't doing well, and just a lot of things weren't clicking. And so they said, well, you got a good arm. And I'd pitched a little bit in high school. They said, we'll turn you into a pitcher. And so I pitched a couple games in the Southern, and they sent me out to Lewiston, Idaho. And I was there for a couple months, and John McNamara, you remember the manager?
Yep.
The greatest guy I ever played for. But anyway, John, and my pitching career was so-so. So anyway, that winter they take me to I go to the Winter League in Florida, and I'm the first pitcher for the A's that spring or that winter in Florida against the Minnesota Twins.
Harmon Killebrew?
No, it wasn't Killebrew. It was Tony Oliva, Don Minchner, Bob Allison, on and on and on. I almost got killed. You never saw so many line drives.
Right.
And so anyway, and about a week later, 2 of our outfielders got hurt. And there was a fellow by the name of Marv Olson who had been a scout with Detroit. And he said, Jim, he says, they're saying they'd like you to play the outfield, with these guys being hurt. And he says, you always could hit, why don't you? I said, hey, that's fine with me. And, well, I ended up being 5 at-bats short of leading the Winter League in hitting.
Wow.
So the next, and that was against Sam McDowell, Jim Cotton, Phil Necro. All these guys were down because they were all kids. They were all young guys.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the next year I go to Hawaii in the Coast League.
Wow.
And things were going just so-so, but there was another baby expected, so I jumped the club in June and came home. And I was home for about 3 weeks, and nobody, they said, I don't know what they're going to do with Small. And I think they wanted me to stay home. But anyway, they said, John McNamara will take you back at Lewiston. So I went out to Lewiston the 1st of July, and in 50-some games I drove in almost 60 runs. And all of a sudden, things, but you got to remember, for almost 3 years, when I should have had maybe 16 to 1,800 at bats, I'd been to bat 400 or 500 times as a kid.
Wow.
So I was in the catch-up phase. I'd become a defensive type hitter, and so and all of a sudden things started clicking. So anyway, I go to Lewiston, and then the next year I go to Albuquerque in the Texas League, and I made the minor league all-star team. First year I was healthy and played basically the whole season, and got traded to Cincinnati. And I said, my God, what do I want to go to Cincinnati for? Kurt Flood, Frank Robinson, and Bob Skinner were their outfield. They were all young guys, all having big years. And so anyway, I had a chance to go to Japan. And but the year before, baseball had made an agreement with Japan that they wouldn't just basically take you. If you wanted to go, you had to make a deal. And so I tried to buy my contract and everything else. And they wouldn't. In fact, John Berglund, I went to John and I says, can I borrow the money if they'll do it? And he said, you remember John?
Oh, real well, yeah.
And he said, yeah, but they wouldn't do it. So anyway, I was about a month getting to spring training in Cincinnati, or down in Florida, in Tampa. And I was there about a week or two, and my foot started hurting. So it was swollen and red and that, and I couldn't figure. So they put me on some crutches. Then my wrists started hurting and my shoulders, and all of a sudden these red spots started popping up. I had rheumatic fever, and so anyway they put me in the hospital there for a few days, and then they sent me home to Michigan. And I was home probably 3 weeks to a month. And I'm doing tests, and they said, and you're young, and they said, you've made a miraculous recovery. And I said, yeah, and they said, yeah, you can go back. So I went back, and they sent me down to Macon, Georgia. And I started little workout, and every day before the games and that, but I wasn't on the roster to play yet. And anyway, down there, week 10 days, and I had a relapse. And that was in late April. And so I ended up in the hospital for quite a few days in Georgia. And then they sent me home, and back in those days, they didn't have the drugs to knock this stuff out of you. So I was in bed and this will get to your story on Don Bowman, and I was in bed from April till September.
What year was that, Jim?
That'd be 1963.
Okay.
Wow.
1963.
Right. Yeah.
And so I was in bed from September to October. No money, because they paid me $1,000, and that's only because I had to fight for it. That was Cincinnati organization. So anyway, that was the end of it. But in January that year, I went to all kinds of tests, doctors and that. And they said, you're fine, you can go back. play. And I says, no, you know what? I had to relapse. I think I'll take my chances doing something else.
Yeah.
So at age 26, I was done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Was that pretty average age for back then baseball players?
Well, actually, today that's young.
Yeah.
Back then, they'd say, you know what, you're getting up in 8 years.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's something, 26.
Yeah.
27 now is kind of that year where I think they went in the major leagues where they look at people being kind of at hitting their peak or hitting their prime.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to get a glass of water, take a break, thanking our sponsor, and we'll be right back
It's a
with
quick
Jim
break,
Small.
so get back
Jim
in a hurry.
Small from Detroit Tigers. Be
On
right back.
Curry's Hot Stove League. When was the last time you checked your tires? At Big Rapids Tire, they know how important it is to keep your ride smooth, safe, and reliable. Whether you're cruising down the highway or navigating tough weather, a fresh set of tires ensures you're ready for anything. Their expert team will help you find the perfect tires for your car and get you back on the road with confidence. Brakes, alignments, struts, and shocks, they do those as well. Don't wait for a blowout or worse. Visit Big Rapids Tire for unbeatable prices, quality, and peace of mind. Big Rapids Tire, Northland Drive, just north of town.
Hooked at Curries.
Pete, why do you come to Curry's?
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I go to Curry's to get the cheeseburger with caramelized onions and mayonnaise and ketchup. And you're not going to ask, where's the beef? It's going to be in the bun.
All right, we're back with Jim Small from Detroit Tigers back in the day. He's lived here for a lot of years, and I'm getting up in age because I can remember Don Bowman, the guy that put Canadian Lakes together, and I remember Jim was one of the first employees he had that I think, in a way, he's going to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm with co-host Brian Miller and Bob Aldridge here. Thanks, Bob, for everything you do. But anyway, Jim, siblings, we talked a little bit about that. It must have been hard on your wife back then. You jumped ship from ship to ship a few times like all the baseball players back then did, and they still do today. How many kids did you have then?
2.
Boys, girls?
Boys.
All right, now, tell me what it was like. You can't really, but do the best you can. Here you are, pretty famous. I mean, a lot of people...
Some people would say infamous, but...
Okay, there you go, infamous. But what was it like for your kids? I mean, you're on the road a lot, and they were little.
But Jimmy was, let me see, he was 4 years old when I was in Albuquerque, which was the last year, and Jay was 2.
Okay, so now growing up, you were quite the athlete, but you grew up in California where the opportunity 12 months a year to play ball. You raised your kids in Michigan. So did they play sports?
Yeah, Jim played basketball at Chippewa Hills.
Okay.
And Jay played, and he played baseball.
Okay.
Which, a story about watching those kids play, I used to sit and bundled up, and I'd say, my God, does anybody want to play baseball when it's this cold, you know, in the spring year? But anyway, they both played basketball and baseball, and Jim was... ended up in the finals of the PGA golf in junior golf 1 year.
Yeah.
And Jay, they both went to Ferris.
Okay.
And Jim, his final full-time job was he was a vice president at Notre Dame.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, and he took a buyout a year and a half ago, but he was had one side of their fundraising. Mm-hmm. But going back, he had quite a career. He published the PGA magazine for years. He started the inside stuff for the NBA.
Wow.
It was called the Corton Group, which he owned, and he had 14 different sports magazines that he published.
Wow.
But
nobody knows that.
Yeah.
And that's
Chippewa Hills kid.
Yeah. You know, I always say there's a lot of people come out of this area and turn into golden boys for somebody besides themselves. Do you ever think they tried to live up to your expectations?
No.
So you weren't that kind of a father.
No.
You didn't push them.
No.
Yeah, I find that in my nephew, Justin Curry. He said, my kids don't want to play sports. That's okay with me. Yeah. And he was in the NFL for a stint there. But anyway, so you didn't pressure him into being a Jim Small?
Because I always resented the fact that I wasn't able to play football. My dad wouldn't let me play football in high school.
Okay.
I was a halfback. I played one game, and then he found out about it. He'd been on the road. And he came even put a stop to it. So I always made up my mind that if they didn't want to do something in sports, okay, do what you know.
Good for you. So how come your dad didn't let you play football? Because he...
Well, I'm afraid I was going to get hurt playing for baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you were a good dad not to do that, because a lot of guys, I know a lot of sons tried to emulate their dad in sports world, not so much in the business world, but sounds like they're both very successful.
Oh, yeah,
You're very proud of them.
Both retired. Jay retired a year and a half ago. He was the president of building systems for Oakwood Homes, which ended up being bought by Warren Buffett. And he had over 100.
Yeah, don't play with that. Just feeding off. But how about, so he went through construction management at Ferris then?
No, they were both business kids, but
wow.
Jay ended up, he started a number of companies for Oakmont and Oakwood, and they built, 1 year, about 4 years ago, they built 2,400 homes just in 1 year, just in Denver.
Wow.
And that was, let alone, the other places, but yeah.
All right, now.
So they did well.
I knew this show was going to go too fast. Let me ask you this.
No, we have
Don
time.
Bowman. Oh, well, you guys can. I got to go to Indiana. But, no, we're going to stay here as long as we have to. Don Bowman. How did you meet Don Bowman?
I was laying in bed with rheumatic fever in August, and he heard because I'd picked up a real estate license a couple years just for the heck of it. And he came over, I understand, and he says, I'm starting a little thing over here. What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to have to do something.
Okay, where were you living at that time, Jim?
Right out there by Blue Lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so anyway, I said, okay, so I got out of bed in September and was over there for a month or so in October, and then the next year I started, and I worked 2 jobs. I sold insurance. That's how I became friends with Diz Howard. You know Diz.
Oh, yeah.
And but I hated the insurance business, and so I did 2 or 3 things for a number of years, and then in about 1968, Canadian Lakes was starting to pop.
Right.
And I had to make a decision, and I said, well, I'm going to go full-time. But I was his first salesman.
Yeah, I knew you.
The falsetto boys of Casanova.
Right.
Every time they'd see me, they'd say, here comes the dirt merchant.
Oh, yeah.
Swamp salesman.
Yeah,
Swamp salesman.
Well,
Yeah.
Don Bowman, I remember when he was a good friend of Gerald Brewer, which was from Beale City area. I think they went to school together in Shepherd. Is that where he went to school? He was a pretty good baseball player.
Don?
Don, yeah.
Yeah, well, he was in spring training with the Cardinals. He played, I think, maybe a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
Because he never finished high school.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
And he was on his way to, I believe, to AAA ball club, but they were in a car coming from Florida, and there was an accident, and he was in the middle seat, from what I understand, and it caught on fire.
Oh, God.
And he was the last one out of the car, and he told the story. He says, I was sitting there on the edge of the road, and the farmer came over, and he says, he was all burned. And he says, son, you just knocked part of your nose off with your hand. He said, don't. So anyway, he ended up 3 years in the hospital in Chicago, off and on, with them rebuilding all the surgeries and everything, and he ended up, with his hands with a couple fingers missing and things like that. But anyway, the doctor who did all the surgeries on him was Nancy Reagan's dad.
Oh, my Lord.
Drake. Yeah.
Boy, you guys know all the famous people on top of the world.
I didn't know him, but
I know, but you got connections one step away.
That's who apparently did all the work on Passavant Hospital in Chicago.
Yeah. So, gosh, we're going to have you back on the history of Canadian Lakes someday, because I want to talk about baseball day. But would you come back?
Sure.
All right. Wouldn't you love to have him come back? Because we got 15 minutes left, and I know, Brian, you got to have some time to talk to him. But I'm just
sitting back
smiling
taking it
here
all in,
because of the stories. Here we have a guy in Big Rapids, Mecosta County, that knows people that we've idolized our whole lives and didn't even know that there was that connection there. And Don Bowman, I remember when he first started, this is how old I am, Gerald Brewer, like I said, was a good friend of his, and a lot of people probably say, no, that's not true. But maybe you remember this. On Buchanan Road, there was a farm just east of the Four Corners of Canadian Lakes on the left-hand side, on the north side going east. He was going to buy that and put a racetrack in there for his good friend Gerald Brewer. And he wanted Gerald to come over and manage the stable horses. And and this was later on because I was a young kid and I was racing horses for Gerald. But you know what? I bet that happened before.
I bet
Yeah,
it did
it
too.
did.
Yeah, because
Because-
he originally did the School Section Lake development.
Okay, I didn't know that.
All that north end,
Yeah.
those channels go up in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he.
What brought him over here? I know we got to break
Well-
down another show, but just real quickly, Cap.
Well, he became a very wealthy guy in the hardware business during the war over in Shepherd.
Okay.
And he guy could look forward and see.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a visionary in a lot of ways, and he bought all these. You know what they are? Boots for tires to repair.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and during the war, he stockpiled a place in Saginaw with all kinds of these things.
Yeah.
So all these things that he did,
Patches.
you know,
Yeah.
he had an outlet for rebuilding engines out of this hardware store in Shepherd.
What'd his dad do?
His dad was a farmer right outside
Okay.
of Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's how he knew the Brewers.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they were over by Beale City, weren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
On Gilmer Road is where
Yeah,
Brewer lived.
yeah.
I don't know where Don lived, but that's where Brewers lived. And Gerald and him, I think, went to school together.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, did Don go to school in Rosebush? I'm not sure.
Yeah. It was Beale City or Rosebush, one of them two. I know Gerald did too. But anyway, Brian, I'm going to give you 12 minutes. I apologize to you guys out in Wonder World, but Jim Small here is quite a story in itself. I mean, did you ever write a book, or did anybody write a book on your life?
No.
The people that you knew.
No, it's not that.
Tell us the difference between personalities from them people than the common person. Is there any difference?
No.
No, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Back then, nobody had a big head, and they just, yeah. Okay, Brian, it's your spot. Sorry, took so long.
No, that's okay. So, got a question from a friend. What about the hitting tips that you got from Ty Cobb? How old were you? And I guess, how did they impact you in your career?
Well, I think probably the first time I went to a baseball school that, because my mother used to take me on the train from San Jose up to San Francisco, and then we'd work our way to the ballpark. It was the old Seal Stadium or someplace where they were having a baseball school, and there'd be a fella teaching you how to slide. There'd be a Joe Sprins was a catcher that worked with catchers, and then Ty Cobb was there, and there was other guys. But his hitting was entirely different than, he had the hands apart and so on. But I think probably the first time I went to one of those schools, I was 12 or 13 years old. And then I went for quite a few years, But Joe Gordon was our batting coach at Detroit. And Joe was really good. And he believed in a sort of a chop swing.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of the
yes.
nowadays
and
what
now
they teach.
Today's it's
Right.
incredible, entirely different. So,
Yeah.
So it's if somebody's parent said, "Well, would you help my son with hitting?" I wouldn't know what to tell him,
Right.
because it's not the way they do things now.
Well, I with coaching youth sports, I still try to teach that instead, because I think what kids do this and they have a tendency to drop their hands and then get under the ball and pop it up.
Well, you remember Charlie Lau? That
Yep.
name?
Yeah.
Charlie Lau. I played with Charlie. Charlie was a good friend. We used to fish together. And anyway, he took on that stroke from Joe Gordon, and George Brett always gave Charlie the recognition for his success as a hitter.
Wow,
Yeah.
George Brett. Well, that's an old name. He was a big-time hitter,
That was
wasn't
my
he?
brother's favorite player when we were growing up.
Oh, he was a good hitter.
Yeah. Did you ever have any of the big times come out to Canadian Lakes?
Well, Norm Browning and I had the Detroit alumni golf outing 2 different times out there.
Wow.
And that's when Tom Monahan owned the ball club.
Okay.
And Monahan was great.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the same age as me, and he'd have us all at his place in Ann Arbor once a year for a big thing. He just liked to sit around and talk about, how it was in the clubhouse with guys like Boone and, and that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had Newhouser out there, Gates Brown,
The Gator.
Wilcox.
What was he like? He had horses, Milt Wilcox.
Yeah.
I remember seeing
We did
him
his
in,
radio show from out there.
Oh, you did? Yeah, he had a radio show, didn't he?
At the outing.
Oh, you did, yeah.
And it was a two-day event, and it was a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
Norm and Canadian Lakes, and at that time, put up the families, and they had them over to the stables and all kinds of things, letting the kids have fun and that.
Yeah.
So, but we had Roy Cullenbine, Joe Ginsberg, Tom Timmerman, everybody you can think of, really. That was playing, because that's back when the alumni was very active. But as time went on, they made so much money, none of them had to stay in Detroit for a job where their recognition was. So and so the alumni is sort of, and the Ilitch family has not been a big booster of the Tiger alumni. They're very big on the Red Wing alumni. In fact, here's a funny thing: they have a Red Wing Alumni Day at Tiger Stadium or at Co-America every year, but don't have one for the
Tigers.
Oh,
wow. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
What did, Milt Wilcox, what did them guys think of this up here?
Well, they liked it.
Yeah,
Well, Ray Herbert ended up living
I
up
remember
here.
that.
And
That's right, he did,
and
didn't
Billy
he? I met
Heft.
him.
And Billy Heft.
I stopped
that's
Ray
what I was gonna
once.
ask you. Huh?
I stopped Ray once on a traffic stop back
Oh,
when
you
I was
did?
at the city. Yeah.
God, that's an old name, isn't it? I remember him. He used to come to the station a
Yeah.
little bit. Is Milt Wilcox still alive?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought he was, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, he got into dogs.
Yep. The retrieving dogs. You'll see him at the
those
weight caps
contests,
games.
how far they could jump
Yep.
into the water and that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just, you sit there and you talk about life's journey, and I was unfortunately not that great of an athlete, so I worked. But you guys...
Well, it's a very short part of your life.
It
in
is.
most cases.
Yeah.
I mean,
but the memories that you have, I'm just so glad that we've recorded these things, and we're going to have you back on because I want to talk about the history of Canadian Lakes, because a lot of people don't realize that man, I always tell everybody, if they say, how do you become successful? I say, well, you got to have a goal, and it takes risk. A lot of people ain't got the, to get the risk going, but
I've got so many
and
stories.
accept failure. You
So
got to
many
accept
stories
failure.
about him.
Yeah, I bet you do. And that's why I want to have you back on. Maybe I'll have you on, unless Brian wants to, definitely have you on the sports program, but you could come on Tuesday too and talk about Canadian Lakes and where it's been, how it got there, how he had his vision. Because I was a kid back when he built that. I was born in 53, so I got my driver's license, 69, I don't know, somewhere around there. And I remember right away my dad put us all on a record at 16 years old. And a lot of our calls were out Canadian Lakes back in the day because people would get stuck going to a site that, well, you probably sold the site, but they'd drive in that sand thinking it was okay to drive in it. And I became very wealthy going to Canadian Lakes.
I'll tell you a story about that.
Yeah.
Don used to buy the oil from these shops, the oil that they drained out of the cars, changed oil. He used to buy that. You could buy it, and
Right.
that's how he kept the roads from being so dusty.
Right, yeah.
And I'll never forget Jim's Car Wash.
Mm-hmm.
He caught me in there one day, and I was banned forever coming. Oh, yeah.
Because you had oil on it.
Oil on there, and it was ruining his brushes.
Well, I can remember, again, we'll come back and talk about this later because we're talking about sports, but I can remember the castle. We'll talk about the castle on our next show. Brian, what else? Any other questions you got? I mean, you
No.
are, you're a manager of a team here in town.
Couple.
Jack plays for you. My grandson plays for Brian. He's he's pretty cool. We were over in Remus here not too long ago playing a good little team from Remus and having a good time. And all of a sudden, Brian calls time. I think Jack was pitching, and he goes out there, and the whole team comes together, right? These are 10, 11-year-old kids.
Yep.
And I said to my wife, I said, what the heck's he giving them out there?
Gummy bears.
He gives them gummy bears.
Yeah,
They're all
kid makes a
smiling.
nice play in the field or at bat. That's something I think I got to have a reputation for here around town is, or in football when I coach that kid makes a nice play, they come back, or basketball at St. Mary's.
Before we go though, Jim, just for what is a kid today? You still get your best ball players from California and down south because they play 12 months a year. But today we got like Rick Smith's kid over there that played at Beale City. He's playing Central. He's pretty good. What would you tell a kid today that really loves, very passionate about baseball? What's the road to success?
Well, apparently, go to these places for instruction from, like Rick Sellers, I think, has hitting over and
I didn't know that.
places.
Isaac Zacco goes to see him.
Yeah, and that's what they have to do today. I mean, this is why these academies have sprung up. So, and unfortunately, not everybody can afford them, but the ones that are really good enough, they find some way to get them there. And it's just work at, I mean, we weren't even allowed to lift weights. Because
really?
Tommy Tresser's one of the first guys to start lifting weights because it would ruin your muscles for baseball. They said you couldn't hit the curveball if you had tight muscles. Well, a lot of guys couldn't hit the curveball regardless, so it didn't matter. But so we weren't. But today these guys are. In fact, I think that's why there's so many injuries. I think they're over conditioned.
Mm-hmm. You talked about your dad not letting you play football, so he kind of pushed you into baseball?
Well, I played, I was good.
Yeah, I know you were. But so in your mind, you loved baseball, though.
Oh, yeah.
So you didn't mind your dad saying you're going to go play baseball, because some parents are pushing their kids into sports today. It doesn't matter what sport.
No,
anything.
I wanted to do it all.
Your passion was baseball. You wanted it, and you took it and lived it. And you got to have fun, right?
Yeah.
And you had fun doing it, right?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Nice.
We're pretty, What's that?
Oh, just my son.
Oh, yeah, he's a good little hitter. Oh, yeah. Brian's kid went out there. We were playing in the districts against Cadillac, which is a good team. We're up 5-1. Goes in for one inning, strikes him out, goes back, and then the coach throwed another pitcher in there, and of course we got beat, but not that it was the kid's fault. One pitch, sophomore, the poor little guy, I felt sorry for him. That's a lot of pressure. Is there a lot of pressure? Were you under a lot of pressure? You felt that, because when you went to the majors, you said, wow, I got a producer. I mean, everybody's there wanting your job, right?
Yeah.
How did you handle that? Was it just within you, the confidence?
Handled pretty well, and then unfortunately, a lot of times not very well. So.
Well, there's not a sport that'll, I guess, be outside of golf that'll humble you more than baseball.
That's right. Yeah,
really.
Yeah. Where can you go 1 for 3 doing something and end up in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah. Right.
Tony Gwynn.
Yeah. I know it.
Yeah.
So do you go? Are you still involved with a lot of baseball or not?
No, I avoid going to the city. But I've followed the Tigers.
They're doing well.
They're doing well, and in fact, I had a long argument with a friend of mine this year. He wanted them to get rid of Torkelson, and I said, "I'm telling you what's going to happen. If they get rid of that kid, he's going to hit 40 for somebody else." And
well, he was good. He's been good. He was good in college and had first year. I think he just had to find himself again.
That's right, and they allowed him. See, today, if you're having a tough time, they just send you down for a couple of weeks to work on things. They'll take a kid, a young player, and all they work on is certain things. He could be hitting 150, but he's doing something that they want him to learn to do.
Right.
And whereas when we were at that time, if you struck out 100 times, you were gone. You'd be on a factory line someplace. It's
just a different approach today.
Everything, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I know. These little guys, though, I get a kick out of. I just love watching these little kids that get a big hit like your Coop there, put it in center field there. Of course, he's got the most beautiful smile. It's like his mother's. And my Lord, these kids just love baseball, don't they? I mean, there's a lot of them do it, and they get to high school, and whatever happens, boils down to a few guys on the team instead of 2 teams. You go down to 1.
Let me butt in and say WBZX Big Rapids.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we probably should get going, but boy, Jim.
Yeah, let's do this again.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I think we got a lot more to.
I think next week we got a guest coming on, but
Bobby
the following
Petrak, new men's basketball coach at Ferris, will be on.
week. Do you want to come back the following week?
Let's do that.
Well,
Okay.
You tell us, Jim.
Yeah.
I've got next week and the week after. The week after, my brother, who's 96, is going to be with me for about 4 days.
Well, bring him with you.
Yeah.
Honestly,
We'll see.
What do you think?
I don't know.
we can always look at that. I mean, yeah, but I think there's a lot. We just hit the tip of the iceberg, honestly.
Right. Yeah, we can talk about what your feelings are, how the game has changed as far as the caps and stuff like that, and then the fairness about back when it was. And I'd like to talk more about what those old timers like Ty Cobb, what was he really like? Was he a disciplinarian? Was he a drinker? Did he like to smoke a cigar every
I heard
night?
he was edgy.
Well, they did a big article with me in Cobb in the San Francisco Examiner in '56. I went to his house and spent the better part of a day with him, and he was very emotional, and talked about it. He had the famous picture of him spiking home run Baker, and he started talking about it, and he says, and he was actually had tears in his eyes. He was very emotional. He was fine. He was a wealthy man. Coca-Cola's first investor.
Yeah.
Well, how old was he when you knew him then?
Well, he was in his 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, God bless America. Another great day out there. Hope everybody enjoys it.
Thank you,
we've got
Jim.
Jim Small as our guest today, and if you want any of your siblings or family members to listen to the show, you can get on 103.9 Big Rapids, right, Bob? What's the line?
Go to our YouTube channel.
Okay, YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's just look for B1039 Big Rapids.
Yeah.
And we'll have it archived there. So
Yeah. So then you guys out there in Wonderland, if you listen to the program, we appreciate you, and we appreciate Big Rapids Tire for sponsoring this hour.
Yep.
In 5 minutes, and I knew we could go longer and longer and longer. I'm long-winded, but Jim Small, you've been a great guest today. Thanks a lot, and we're going to get you back on here soon again. Well, I want to talk about Canadian Lakes.
There's a big story there.
Yeah.
I mean, very interesting.
Okay, we're
'Cause I was thinking, Canadian Lakes, before the Villages.
Yeah.
The Villages is such a phenomenon now.
Yeah.
Canadian Lakes was the pioneer in that.
Well, and then too, we're going to talk about Don Bowman and his experience with baseball, how a lot of people didn't know what happened there. And it's funny, Bob, and what intrigues me is Doug Parrish told me a long time ago, I wasn't one, but I made one. And Don Bowman was one, and he produced his great-grandsons are playing football for Big Rapids right now, Jack and Max. 2 of the nicest kids that I know. Their parents are doing a great job raising those 2 boys, and we're going to talk about them a little bit too. And I'm sure Don's looking down and just big smile on his face because those boys aren't going to be done after high school. I'll guarantee you that.
It looks like Max is Division I.
Yeah.
He's a big boy, and Jack is. I always used to call Jack kind of a little man child.
Yeah.
He's
But more importantly, I
great
mean
kid.
this. They are just nice young people, and we need more of them. All right, God bless America. We'll see you next time.
When was the last time you checked your tires? At Big Rapids Tire, they know how important it is to keep your ride smooth, safe, and reliable. Whether you're cruising down the highway or navigating tough weather, a fresh set of tires ensures you're ready for anything. Their expert team will help you find the perfect tires for your car and get you back on the road with confidence. Brakes, alignments, struts, and shocks, they do those as well. Don't wait for a blowout or worse. Visit Big Rapids Tire for unbeatable prices, quality, and peace of mind. Big Rapids Tire, Northland Drive, just north of town.